Hello everyone, welcome to my book share on Ditch That Textbook by Matt Miller. I started with this slide right here to just show you some pictures from around my school. Once I get into the bulk of my presentation, it may be kind of harder to see these. So we have a picture in the upper right hand corner of my library at my school. This is my calendar posted on my whiteboard in my classroom. My school has a superheroes theme this year, so this is a hallway display. These are character traits that we reward students by giving them character cards, and then we have drawings throughout the month for those. And so that kind of deals with this. We're a class school, so that goes back to those character qualities we're looking for. This is another teacher's smartboard in her room. This is my very messy desk, and this is my class. Notice how the desks are arranged in 3 rows with 2 desks in a row, and I'll get into that a little bit later, and just kind of some things that I think maybe could be improved with that. And then we have a data wall that tracks all the acuity scores leading up to ISTEP throughout the year. So as I read this book, just a lot of thoughts about my school, about my teaching, about my class structure. So I want to get into that through all these. So you'll see in my presentation that I kind of turned each of these pictures into a meme. I don't know if it would be classified as a meme or not. I think I tried to go that route. So the premise of that textbook, you hear the title and you think, oh, okay, well, it's all about like not using textbooks, probably using a lot of technology, yada, yada, yada. The thing we always hear. You go to a typical professional development, you'd probably hear the same kind of things. And I think it was those things. It was about how to integrate technology, how to help students collaborate and be creative. It was all of those things, but I feel like it was much more. It was much more about being practical, being wise as a teacher, knowing where your limits are, knowing that you can't just do every single app that comes out. You need to pace yourself in learning those things. You need to not overwhelm your students with too many different types of apps and using those. And then really at the end of the day, you just can't spend all of your time at school from 5 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night trying to master technology just to make education better. Like, we all want the best for our students, but there has to be somewhat of a limit. I thought that was a really cool component of his book. He also talked a lot about just building relationships with students and kind of debunking some myths, not smiling till Christmas, building friendships with students, saying that you can't be your student's friend. And I just thought that was really an interesting component to have in a textbook kind of geared towards technology. So kind of that's what I would say about some of my views on the premise of the book. So you can see my board here. One thing that I was thinking about just as I read the book is I know that there are things I can improve. I use my whiteboard to put the calendar. I know of Google Calendar. There's tons of other ways that I can get that out there. And I think part of what he dealt with in the book is that we just have this fear that maybe things aren't going to go well. There's too much of a learning curve. So the fact that I still rely on using a whiteboard, it's convenient. It's up there so students can see it. Sometimes I feel like when I use technology, my students just don't use it. I've spent the last week and a half, 2 weeks creating videos using Screencast-O-Matic that I'm using right now, and I've asked students how many have used it, and like very few are raising their hands. So that can be rather discouraging. So I think that was one thing that as I was just thinking that I want to do a lot of these things, but sometimes I just get discouraged, and I think that was a big component in the book as well. I really absolutely love this book. Probably the best book that I've ever read on education. I read some really good ones over the summer in a very similar class to this through IUPUI, but I felt like this book just had a lot of the components. It was very well-rounded. I thought it was very practical. Where you could read it from a lot of different angles and things you can do. And I do feel like he talked a lot about just building relationships with students and really investing in them. So setting a positive school culture, is one of the things that my school emphasizes a lot. We do that through the class training that we've had and these character traits that we're trying to embody. But as a teacher, you just got to really live that out yourself. I think I've really struggled sometimes with how I treat my students. Like do they think that I like them? Because sometimes I don't know if I really show that. So I've been trying to be really intentional about that this year, and I think this book was a further indicator of how I need to do that. Other practices that just kind of were brought out in the book. I want to increase my collaboration among my students. I want to get away from being a lecturing teacher where I just strictly lecture. And we did a world religions unit this past week, and I really limited my lecturing to about 15 minutes, and then just gave time for students to kind of go over the resources that I gave to them and just kind of put more of the learning in their hands. And that's a tough thing to do. And Matt Miller kind of acknowledges that in the book, that it's not an easy thing to kind of give up the reins to your students, to give up that hold that maybe even a textbook mentality would have to you. And he obviously does talk a lot about technology and the importance of technology. One thing, even just going through my library, I was looking at all the shelves and I'm like, why are we not going digital? You know, I read this entire book digitally. I read it on my Kindle app, and why don't we not offer that feature to students? Libraries are starting to go that way more. I don't know. I just see that maybe being the next hurdle for the library into making itself more digital. Applying the book to my teaching, I've already been kind of talking about through all that. But, you know, a lot of technology, why it appeals to me is I just do not feel like I am very organized in paper. And Matt Miller talks a lot about how, you know, everybody used to use filing cabinets. And, you know, I started out that way, trying to do both, like do the Google Drive thing and then do organize and filing cabinets. And I finally just gave up. Like, this is what my desk looks like most of the time. So I am not a paper person. I am not very organized in that way, and keeping track of homework is difficult. So I have really favored embracing technology. I do kind of feel like on the time frame aspect that sometimes technology makes it slower to grade things. I've been grading a lot of study guides recently that were completed through Google Docs, and it just took a long time to grade because I had to wait for every one of them to load and then go through them, you know, and then leave comments, and some of those comments I don't know if students are going to look at. So again, it comes back to that like hesitation to use technology. And my school has a data wall, as I talked about, and sometimes I feel like we do a lot of things to make us look really good for the preparation for a standardized test, but I wonder really how practical this is. Data is important when it's available and when it's used to guide instruction. My school has this, and I used it as a math teacher a couple of years ago. But I just wonder really how effective something like that is. Would it be more effective in a digital component, getting those scores, those raw scores, in the hands of teachers in some sort of more interactive way? I'm just not sure that this looks really good whenever you have an accreditation like we had last year, but I'm not sure that it's really that effective um, for doing the things that it's really meant to do. I went into another teacher's room and I took this picture of her smartboard. And it was funny. We had about a 30-minute conversation about the problems she's having in her smartboard, and that wasn't even my intention in going in there. She's a language arts teacher, and our school only has these smartboards for math and language arts. And I kind of sometimes feel like this is a little bit of the problem with when schools try to integrate technology, that they favor, okay, well, we're going to just give it to the teachers that it matters most for test scores, not necessarily those that are going to use it. And that's kind of what the conversation led to. She hasn't been trained on this device at all, and her internet connection hasn't been working. So I think sometimes technology shouldn't be restrictive. She was talking about how she's just spent hours and hours and hours trying to make it work, and then always has to have a backup plan for when it fails. And I felt Matt Miller kind of dwelled on that in the book a lot, that teachers should not spend so much time investing in technology that they're neglecting their families, and they're neglecting, you know, really making their teaching effective because they're just trying to spend all the time to make technology work. You know, there were a lot of connections to the course readings that we've been doing. Definitely trying to find ways of engaging students effectively. So I come back to, you know, there's probably an app for that, but will my students use it? And I just feel like we need to, if students are using technology, we need to start embracing some of those qualities as well. You see the qualities up here of, you know, characteristics of character that we need to have as teachers, but we also need to start embracing some of the technology that students are already using. He talks a lot about Twitter in the book, and I've never really considered using Twitter too much. Teacher I used to work with did use it some, so maybe that's an option as well. And I just really feel like we need to go over, like, focus on the interest of students. And I put up this, you know, this Batman um, wall display here, and I don't know if that's necessarily that those are fine things, and doing a superhero themes are things that students can relate to. But whenever you start making the practices in your classroom something that students can relate to, I think that's really what this book hit at, is that you've got to make your practices be powerful and relevant to students and things that they're going to want to be there, even if they don't have to be there. He said that in the book at one point. I thought that was just really well said. And I was reading this during the midst of my students taking the acuity test at one point during the day, and I read that line out loud, and I almost snickered because I'm like, how many of my students would choose to just go home right now because they're tired of taking a test? So I don't know. There's lots of thoughts in this book. It's one of those books that I want to reread parts of it and go back over it, especially whenever I'm kind of stuck on making a lesson better. And I kind of look forward to sharing some of my unit plans that I've got developing, because I think I got some really good ideas of how to make my classroom to the next level, take it to the next level. Thanks.